Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at something with, well, truly global implications. The nuclear rivalry between India and Pakistan.
That's right. And specifically, those clashes back in May 2025, they really set off alarm bells everywhere, brought the whole nuclear question right back into focus.
Absolutely. It's sobering when you think about the numbers. India with around 180 warheads, Pakistan maybe 170. The stakes are just immense.
Immense is the right word. So today, we want to kind of walk through what actually happened in May 25.
Yeah, understand the sequence of events, look at the nuclear doctrines driving things on both sides.
And hopefully pull out some key lessons, for stability going forward.
Okay, so let's get into it. What kicked this specific crisis off?
Well, the immediate trigger was a terrorist attack in Pahalgam, that's in Indian-administered Kashmir. Happened on April 22nd, 2025.
A pretty devastating attack, wasn't it?
It was. 25 people killed, tragically. Many of them were tourists. And, Kashmir itself is obviously this long-standing point of contention.
Right. And didn't a group initially claim responsibility?
Yes. The Resistance Front, TRF. They're believed to have links to Lashkar-e-Taiba. They claimed it, but then, interestingly, they retracted that claim later.
Which adds a layer of confusion, I suppose.
It certainly does. But India's reaction was very clear, very fast. They pointed the finger directly at Pakistan, accusing them of state-sponsored terrorism.
Which Pakistan denied.
Strongly denied it, yes. And they also condemned the attack itself.
Okay, so accusations flying back and forth. Then came India's military response.
Exactly. About 2 weeks later, May 6th, India launched Operation Sindoor.
Sindoor, right. And this involved hitting targets inside Pakistan.
Yes. India said they struck 9 alleged terrorist camps, some in Pakistan proper, some in Pakistan-administered Kashmir.
And they used some pretty advanced hardware for this, didn't they?
They did. Rafale jets, the French fighters, and they used Escalated cruise missiles.
Those are long-range, air-launched.
Precisely. Designed for deep strikes. Plus, hammer precision bombs. So this wasn't just a symbolic strike. It showed a significant offensive capability, a definite step up.
And Pakistan's reaction to Operation Sindoor. Predictably strong, I imagine?
Extremely strong. They reported 31 civilian deaths from the strikes, called it an act of war.
An act of war, okay, so they retaliated.
Swiftly. With their own operation, Bunyan Unmarsus, they went after Indian military installations.
Using what, drones? Missiles?
Both.
Yeah.
Drones and missiles, and this is where things got really, really unprecedented.
How so?
Well, for the first time, you had these two nuclear powers directly engaging each other with drones, maybe even in aerial dogfights. We hadn't seen that before.
Wow. That's a major escalation. Drone warfare between nuclear states.
It really is. Pakistan actually claimed they shot down 5 Indian jets, including some Rafale.
Really? 5?
That was their claim. They highlighted their use of Chinese J-10C fighters armed with PL-15 missiles. It sort of showcased their own modernized air power.
So this intense conventional fighting, it naturally brings the nuclear dimension into sharp focus.
Absolutely. You have to look at the doctrines.
Let's do that. India's official stance is no first use, NFU.
That's the declared policy, yes. But it's become a bit more ambiguous in recent years. There's been rhetoric suggesting shifts.
Right, like back in 2019, the defense minister hinted NFU wasn't set in stone, depended on circumstances.
Exactly. And then, right in the middle of this crisis, May 2025, Prime Minister Modi said, quote, "There is no tolerance for nuclear blackmail."
Which sounds like a hardening of the position. Raises questions about when they might consider it.
It certainly does. Now, Pakistan is different. They don't have an NFU policy.
No NFU, their strategy is called.
Full spectrum deterrence. Basically, they aim to deter India across the board, conventional and nuclear. And this includes tactical battlefield nuclear weapons.
Ah, the tactical nukes. That's a key part of their strategy, isn't it? To counter India's larger conventional army.
Precisely. The Nasser missile is the main example here. Short range, maybe 70 kilometers.
So the idea is to deter a big Indian ground attack by threatening to use these smaller nukes first.
That's the logic, yes. It's meant to signal that even a conventional defeat isn't acceptable and could trigger a nuclear response. But of course, it dramatically lowers the threshold for nuclear use.
A much lower threshold.
Yeah.
Very risky. And Pakistan made some moves during this crisis to signal their readiness, right?
They did, very deliberately. They convened their National Command Authority, the NCA.
That's the top body for nuclear decisions.
It is. Convening it sends a very clear signal, domestically and internationally, that they're on high alert, considering all options.
And there were some explicit warnings coming out of Pakistan, too.
Yes, quite stark ones. One official warned that if India escalated further, or even if they interfered with Pakistan's water supplies,
Water supplies, wow.
they'd be ready to use both conventional and nuclear force. It really highlights how interconnected everything is, how quickly things could spiral.
And India's reaction to Pakistan's nuclear posture during this.
Well, India's defense minister actually called for the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, to get oversight over Pakistan's nuclear arsenal.
How did that go down?
Predictably badly. Pakistan rejected it immediately, called it an infringement on their sovereignty, vehemently rejected it.
So tensions are sky high, direct military clashes, nuclear signaling. How did they pull back from the edge?
Well, eventually, a ceasefire was brokered. That was on May 10th. It took a lot of diplomatic heavy lifting, particularly from the United States.
Right, the U.S. played a big role here.
They did. President Trump even claimed credit, saying they'd averted a nuclear conflict.
But it wasn't exactly a clean break, was it? The ceasefire was fragile.
Very fragile. Remember, this ceasefire only came after the missile and drone strikes had already happened. And even after the agreement, there were reports of violations, explosions along the border within hours.
So given how close it seems they came, what actually stopped it from getting worse?
Yeah.
What were the key factors preventing, the unthinkable?
Analysts point to three main things generally. First, probably mutual nuclear deterrence itself.
The MAD principle. Mutually assured destruction.
Essentially, yes. Both sides knew a full nuclear exchange would be catastrophic for everyone. That likely induced some caution, even amidst the escalation.
Okay, so deterrence worked in a terrifying sort of way. What else?
Second, huge international pressure. The U.S., China, Russia, all the major players were leaning heavily on both sides to de-escalate.
Diplomatic pressure. Got it. And the third factor?
The third factor was probably the type of conflict. It was intense, yes, with missiles and drones.
But no major ground invasion.
Exactly. Unlike some past wars, without large armies crossing borders, some of the immediate use-it-or-lose-it pressure, especially regarding Pakistan's tactical nukes, might have been slightly less acute.
That makes sense. Less pressure to preempt a conventional breakthrough with a tactical nuke if there's no massive ground offensive underway.
Right. It likely bought some breathing room.
Okay, so catastrophe averted, thankfully. But this crisis really seems to highlight some dangerous underlying trends.
Oh, absolutely. Several very worrying trends emerged or were reinforced.
Yeah.
Well, first, these new ways of fighting. Drones, cyber warfare potential, precision strikes. It makes conflict happen much faster. It's harder to understand intentions, harder to control escalation. The risk of miscalculation just shoots up.
And it feels like India's actions, those deeper strikes with Operation Sindoor compared to, say, the Balakot strike in 2019,
Yeah.
maybe that set a new, riskier precedent, lowered the bar for escalation.
That's a serious concern, yes. If each crisis involves hitting harder and deeper, you get into a very dangerous cycle where the next logical step becomes even bigger.
And then you add in Pakistan's tactical nukes, plus India's apparently hardening stance on NFU. The potential for miscalculation seems enormous.
It really does. It creates a much more unstable mix, and we have to be clear about the stakes. Experts consistently warn that even a limited nuclear exchange in South Asia, the consequences would be global.
We're not just talking regional devastation. You mentioned numbers earlier.
Estimates are truly horrific. Maybe 20 million immediate deaths from a limited exchange. But beyond that,
Nuclear
the
winter.
potential for nuclear winter is very real. Smoke and soot blocking the sun, disrupting climate, leading to widespread crop failures, and potentially global famine. Catastrophic on a planetary scale.
Just devastating to contemplate. So, bringing it all together,
Yeah.
what's the final verdict? After May 2025, how do we assess the risk of nuclear war there?
Look, the immediate risk, day-to-day, might still be considered low, but it's absolutely not zero. That's the crucial point.
They've avoided the ultimate catastrophe for decades.
They have, but each crisis like this chips away at stability. It shows how quickly things like terrorism, nationalism, new military tech, how quickly they can push things towards the edge.
As May 2025 demonstrated all too clearly.
Exactly. There's a quote from an analyst that sticks with me. With nukes, even a small risk is too large.
That sums it up pretty well.
For now, deterrence seems to be holding. Just. But without addressing the root causes, especially the dispute over Kashmir, we're just setting the stage for the next crisis, which could be even more dangerous.
A very stark warning. So, to recap this deep dive, May 2025 saw a dangerous spiral from a terrorist attack to direct military clashes involving drones and missiles, pushing India and Pakistan closer to the nuclear brink than perhaps ever before.
A fragile ceasefire stopped the immediate escalation, partly due to deterrence, international pressure, and the lack of a ground war.
But the crisis exposed worrying trends, faster conflict, potentially lower thresholds, and the catastrophic risks of miscalculation amplified by evolving nuclear doctrines. It's a powerful reminder of the dangers simmering in the region.
And it leaves us, and you listening, with a really important question to think about. In a world grappling with these complex regional tensions in the nuclear age, do we truly appreciate the long-term risks? And what more needs to be done to prevent the unthinkable from becoming reality? Something profound to consider.